this. We're not.
We'll just
we're
talk
not
over the scenery.
We're going to talk over this. That's exactly. We're just like the ad lib noise in the background. We'll talk over the scenery.
Okay, I think we're
all right. We're setting all.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome everyone to another great video. We're talking about how to retire comfortably. How much money do you need? You're in Canada, you want $5,000 a month. How big of a savings pot do you need? We're going to go through a couple of examples answering that question at various budget levels. Before we get too deep though, Kevin, we have to tell the folks there is really no magic number. No one size fits all.
That's exactly it. I mean, basically, you've got to figure out what you want to do, and each person's different, so it's an individual sort of scenario that you're looking for. So whether or not that magic number is $2 million depends on what your needs are, right? If you're looking at a certain amount per month, maybe you need $500,000, you don't need the $2 million. So each person's an individual. We have to make sure that you know that, so there is no special formula to say, oh, you've got the $1.3 million, you can now retire.
Yeah, and we're going to give you some examples. We're working in inflation, so there's going to be lots of detail here, but you have to keep that in mind.
That's right.
There's no one size fits all. We have many clients retire. They have less than $1 million. We have some that have multiple millions because they have really high targets. No right, no wrong. It's really about fit. So use that as a context for our discussion.
That's right.
Start with the example here. We have John and Jane Sample because we're very original with our names. They're both 65. They want to retire right away at 65. There's CPP OAS. Let's just assume combined they have 2,200. Right. We're not going to get into all the nuance here. We have a full webinar on CPP OAS. We'll link to that somewhere up here. So if you want all those details, click on that. We're going to gloss over CPP and OAS to talk more about how much savings you need. But before we go too deep, we need to know the sources of retirement income.
Yeah, and that's the biggest one, right? Like, where are you getting all this money from? Obviously, as we just mentioned to you beforehand, we're going to use CPP and OAS.
Some of it,
your government-provided scenario.
That's the orange block there.
Maybe you have an employer pension. For our assumption, we're not going to define defined benefits, probably a defined contribution you're dealing with.
It's more common.
Exactly. And then there's also your personal savings that you put away. What you've got in RSPs, what you may have in a TFSA or your non-registered account. All those are basically the nutshell that you're going to be using to draw from the money that you're going to need in retirement.
And that's what we're trying to solve for here. So, all right, I want $5,000 a month in retirement. How much savings do I need? There's going to be a little bit of pension, of course, but how much do I have to put aside to get to that target? The assumptions here, and this is key, we'll go through them together. We're assuming in our example, John and Jane are retiring at 65, and they're 65 right now. So they're at retirement.
They fit the number.
We're going to assume 30 years, so living to 95. That's not exaggerant. I think
not
that's a safe assumption. We're assuming inflation, 2.5%. No, inflation's been higher recently, but this is 2.5% per year over a 30-year window.
Which is more realistic.
Yeah, more realistic. We're looking at pre-tax targets of $5,000 before tax, so $5,000 before tax. Probably with $4,000 in your pocket per month after tax, but that's the target, pre-tax targets. Rate of return, you have to keep it low when you're doing it. Yeah, you're making an assumption. You don't want to assume you get 10% and then you only get 8 and your whole plan's off target.
You're really done.
We're assuming you get 4.5. So think about that. Inflation 2.5, and we're assuming 4.5 gain.
So yeah, it's a 2% that you're getting overall net above whatever's sitting there.
Realistic numbers here. We know this is very achievable, so we're going to provide a realistic scenario, and there's also a few other details there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, like we're assuming no estate goal. So basically, what we're dealing with John and Jane, everything is going out the door. No defined benefit plan, as we said. Their savings account, working pension, whatever they've got for cash wise, we're adding that all together. We're including no fixed assets either. So we're not using a house if they have a home funded for retirement. If they have cottage or anything else, we're not using any of that money or drawing off of that to try and deal with any of these sort of scenarios. So again, that's one of the scenarios we deal with. And again, we have a formula on our website, right? We can go to beckerorg.com and we can figure out how to do these numbers.
That's exactly what we're going to do. And, and it's a free calculator, so you can use it as well. But the idea is we have to simplify the retirement plan so that we can actually provide some detail and give you a bit of a takeaway. Realistic plans are far more complex.
They are.
But simplified scenario, we'll go through example 1 and we'll use that Becker Org calculator to do exactly that. In example 1, we're going to start with $3,500 per month as the target. That's the budget they want to achieve.
Pre-tax.
You got it. So you're going to the Becker Org website, you're clicking on the investor resources there, you click on the calculator. There's lots of calculators. They're all free. We're using the retirement calculator here. You're plugging in the value, so $3,500 a month. That's about $42,000 in a year. You can see we're adding the inflation numbers, that 2.5%, 4.5% rate of return. Eventually, you get all your data in there. You hit the calculate button. You get a nice report. We hit view report. There's lots of data that's going to be generated as part of that report, and you can see some of that on the screen now. The idea here is you get the full table, and it shows you your desired income is going up because we're using that inflation. It's working that into the calculation there, and you can see at the end of the table the amount of money left. It's pretty much all spent. You're looking at like $7,000.
That the most,
that remains. So that example there, so if you wanted $3,500 a month with all of our assumptions, you need a pot of money of about $345,000 to create that, given our assumptions.
Exactly, and of course, one of the big factors is that in the CPP and OAS scenario, 62% of what you need is basically given you from the government.
Yeah.
So that's why that pot is a little smaller, where you're looking at that roughly $350,000 is all you're going to need. So that larger the pot is from the government, the less amount you're going to need on your side. So that's sort of example one. Now, if we sort of amped it up to example two and did 5,000, now all of a sudden these numbers start to stretch a little bit more. Now all of a sudden at that 2,200, that's only 44%. So we are going to need a lot more money based on that sort of scenario, aren't we?
And that's the idea here. So if you need $3,000 and you get $3,000 from the CPP, OAS, and pension, well, great, that's easy.
Yep.
It's the idea that if the CPP, OAS, and your pensions, the lower percentage they are of your desired income target,
Yep.
the more savings you're going to need. So in that first example, CPP, OAS are 62% of the target. We're keeping
That's right.
CPP, OAS the same. We're just saying we want more money, so it's a lower percentage of the target. So now that pot, in example 2, where we want $5,000 pre-tax per month, that pot is now $740,000. So we only went up $1,500 a month, but the pot essentially
More than
doubled.
Yeah, exactly.
Because all of the extra had to come from savings, because there's no additional pension, so it all had to be from that savings pot. And you'll notice when we go to example 3 here, where we say we now want $7,000, the same thing happens here.
Yeah, and again, but we're dealing with the same thing as opposed to having that, it's gone from 62 to 42. Well, now you're dealing with sort of 31% is all you're going to get. So, of course, vastly much more money you're going to need, assuming that you want to get that. And again, that's that desire that you want. You want $7,000 a month pre-tax to be able to deal with this. All of a sudden, your numbers are going to have to go up. And as we can see, it doesn't double again, but it does go up by almost 50% to, that 1.27 million, which is a big number to sort of have and go from there. So just remember those assumptions. Basically, as you get more and more money that you want, there's only a set amount you're going to get from the government, and after that, you're going to have to be able to supply what these numbers are.
Yeah, and high-level examples meant to give you a kind of a takeaway here. You're going to need a more detailed plan. If you have questions on your detailed plan or any of these examples, visit us, chatwithclintonkevin.com. You're already on the website using the calculator. There's a different button there for chatwithclintonkevin.com. Go to that one, fill in the form, comes right to us. No robots or algorithms here. We actually reply to all of the emails directly. It is myself and Kevin, not a junior or an associate. And we'd certainly love to hear from you. So chatwithclintonkevin.com. We'll do one more example here. And now we're going to change some of the criteria. We've been using kind of the set criteria and just upping the budget.
That's right.
What if we kept it at $5,000 a month, but we want to retire at 60 instead of 65? Now, the first change in our example here, John and Jane, they're going to have less pension.
That's
because CPP and OAS, one, you don't get OAS till 65. CPP is going to be lower. You take it at 60. So in our example, they went from $2,200 between the two of them, CPP and OAS. Now they're only going to be at $960, so lower.
That's less than half.
Yeah, much lower. And if they wanted $5,000 a month, we go through the calculator, plug in all those figures. You need a larger pot of money, over $1 million. We got $1,015,000 as that approximate pot of savings. Just to compare that, in the first example, retiring at 65, more CPP and OAS, you needed $740,000 to get that $5,000 a month. You retire at 60, lower CPP, OAS, longer window, you now need over $1 million. So you can see the big difference there.
Well, exactly, and that's going to have a very big bearing on whether or not you're retiring early or not. I mean, these are big factors you have to consider because, if you're sitting at that $750,000 mark and you're thinking, well, I'd like to retire, well, if you're looking at $5,000 a month, basically what the plan is saying is that you're not going to be able to get to that 95 age bracket. But if you want to go at 60, either you have to adjust down what you want to get, or you're going to have to wait those extra 5 years to be able to deal with it so that you'll leave nothing at the end of the day. And these are big assumptions that you really need to realize. So this gives you a basics about it, but we're more than happy to help you out with that scenario going forward.
Yeah, and a few of the key considerations here. We went through 4 different examples and showed you how that pot of money you require changes based on your budget and a few other factors there. Some of the key takeaways, first one is that budget's key.
That's right, you need to know that. That's important.
Yeah, we're throwing out random numbers here to give you an idea. You really need to know how much you spend. That's going to really determine how much you need to save. And use your current lifestyle as an example. Likely your spending pattern will change throughout retirement. It's perfectly normal. That's okay. But as a starting figure, look at how you live your life now. Use that number, and then you can adjust as you go.
Yeah, and you basically want to make sure that it's a fairly accurate ballpark. No, it doesn't need to be to the penny. We don't need to know exactly what the actual decimal point is, but you want to have that accurate ballpark. Just saying, you're going to need $4,000 a month, and you haven't done any planning, and all of a sudden you realize you're doing $5 a month now, that's not going to work for you. So make sure that that's sort of an accurate scenario. Again, the other factor you're going to have to look at, what are your estate plans? What are you really doing? Do you
That's
really
key.
want to
That's
sit
key.
there and spend every dime and, you know, that last check bounces for you and that's good?
That's fine if that's your goal.
But if you want to leave something for, you know, the next generation, or you have charities or something you want to deal with, then all of a sudden the numbers that we're dealing with here,
Have
where
to be
we've
bigger.
spent everything,
Yeah.
they have to be bigger. It's something you have to consider going forward.
Yeah, we assumed everything was spent and you had
That's
just a
right.
little bit left over. If you want something for the next generation, well, you need another asset, right? You
Yeah.
either need more money or maybe you got a cottage or something else.
Yeah, that's
You
going
have
to deal
to
with that.
factor that into the plan. Another takeaway here is the pensions, right? We talked about it a few times.
Mhm.
If your desired target is say 5,000, you have 3,000 of that as pension. Well, that's pretty good. That
That's
means
right.
your savings only have to cover a little bit of that. So the more pension you have, the less savings you actually need.
That's
that could be
right.
CPP, that could be OAS. Maybe you have a defined benefit plan through work. You're one of the lucky few that have those.
Be perfect.
The more of those pensions you have, the smaller the savings pot needs to be. And then the last piece here, this is quite high level. We try to give you a few
That's right.
takeaways, but we had to simplify the scenarios in order to give you those takeaways. So this gets to the Beckler mantra. If you want something unique to new, what do you need?
You need to have a plan.
First.
That is the first and foremost thing. Before you hit retirement, make sure you know what
Yeah.
you want to do. Make sure you've considered everything. You want to look at your taxes, your will, your estate. You need that plan, the whole wealth scenario covered, just so that you figure out what you got going forward. If you don't have that, then you know you're just sort of throwing darts at a board and hoping that you're going to get it the right way. So make sure you have the plan, whether it's a simplified one to sort of base this on, or the more expanded one that we can deal with from there. Having a plan is important.
You need something that's a fit for your situation. That's what the plan is all about. You like this video, we have many others, specifically one on determining how much will you spend in retirement. We look at lots of
Nice.
data there. It's floating on the screen. Click on that video. We'll see you again very soon.
Take care. All right, we got that one done.